Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take the research you send us and really boil it down, get to the core insights, turn all that info into something you can actually use.
hmm
And today, we're looking at something pretty fundamental. I mean, really core to communicating well. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, we've got this great source guide here. It's all about one specific skill, building your English vocabulary.
Right. Vocabulary, crucial stuff.
And it's clear right off the bat, this isn't just, knowing more words on a list somewhere.
No, definitely not flashcards again.
Exactly. It's about having them ready, like
Yeah.
actually ready to pull out and use an arsenal, kind of.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, isn't it? To pull out the simple, the systematic recipe this guide gives for really mastering vocabulary.
A clear path.
Because the source is pretty blunt about why this matters. It's not just about grades or, sounding smart.
No, it's much bigger than that. It links directly to confidence.
Confidence, right. Socially, professionally,
Yeah.
just speaking more clearly, understanding those little subtle things in conversation.
And feeling ready, ready
Yeah.
to jump in without that awful feeling of searching for the right word, fishing around.
Yeah, exactly that feeling. We've all been there.
And what I found really fascinating is how the source actually organizes the whole learning process. It helps you get away from just like memorizing lists and then forgetting everything 2 days later.
Uh-huh. That cycle. So frustrating.
Yeah, that frustrating cycle. Instead, it lays out this 5-stage system, kind of like a continuous loop, really.
Okay, a system. I like systems.
And the whole point is to take words from what they call your passive vocabulary, the ones you kind of recognize when you see or hear them.
Yeah, you know them when you see them, but you wouldn't think to use them yourself.
Right, exactly. But you can't quite grab them to use yourself.
Yeah.
The system moves them from there into your active, everyday speech pattern.
Ah, okay. Making them usable.
Precisely. So for you listening, especially if you want something efficient, but also, thorough, this structured approach is, it's really useful. Gold, as they say.
Okay, so where does this system start? What's step one?
It starts with input, getting the words in, basically.
Makes sense. You can't use what you don't have.
Right. And the source calls this the input strategy and the main way in, reading.
Okay, reading. But I imagine it's not just like forcing yourself through dense academic papers.
Not at all. That's the key insight here. It emphasizes reading for, pleasure and immersion, not just for study.
So finding stuff you actually want to read.
Yes, exactly. The guide really pushes accessibility and volume, quantity almost. It suggests things you'll actually stick with. News articles, maybe novels, or get this, even comic books.
Comic books, really?
Yep, mentioned specifically. The idea is flow. You should be reading smoothly enough that the context clues you into the meaning, not stopping every 5 seconds with a dictionary.
Okay, so the goal at this stage is more about recognition, just encountering the words in the wild.
Exactly. Recognition, not necessarily immediate mastery. You're just soaking it in.
Okay. But I have to push back a bit there. If I'm only reading, say, comic books, aren't I just learning very specific, maybe informal language? How do you balance that?
That's a really good point. And the source addresses it directly. It doesn't suggest only reading comics. It demands a sort of dual input strategy.
Dual. Okay, so reading plus.
Reading plus active listening. Reading gives you the words and context, the structure, but listening gives you the rhythm, the pronunciation, how it actually sounds when people talk.
Ah, okay. So you're not just seeing the word, you're hearing it used properly by presumably native speakers or proficient speakers.
Precisely. And active listening is the key phrase here.
Right, so not just having a podcast on in the background while you're doing dishes.
Definitely not. The source is pretty clear. Passive listening is kind of wasteful for this purpose. When you're listening, maybe it's a documentary, maybe a song, a podcast like this one, even you need to be tuned in.
Tuned in how?
Listening specifically for interesting words or useful phrases. And this is critical, actually, noting them down. Writing them down as you hear them.
Okay, so that's the first active step. Hear it, capture it.
Exactly. That's how you turn just consuming stuff into a real personalized learning activity. You're basically building your own custom phrase book, pulling language from things you actually find engaging.
I like that. It immediately solves that problem of learning random vocabulary lists from textbooks that feel totally disconnected from how people actually talk.
Right. You only capture words that are genuinely relevant to your interests right now.
Okay, so we've read something, we've listened, we've maybe jotted down a cool new word or phrase we encountered. It's been inputted.
Yep.
But how do we stop it from just evaporating, going in one ear and out the other?
Well, that brings us to the next crucial phase. Because finding the word is only half the battle, maybe less.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Is that what you're going to say?
Huh, pretty much. This next part is all about retention, processing, bridging that gap between just recognizing a word and actually remembering it, owning it.
Okay, so moving from passive to active memory, what does the source say is the absolute key step here?
One very specific action, right after you encounter the word, you have to write it down.
We mentioned noting it down during listening. Is this the same thing?
It builds on that, but the source seems to put a special emphasis on the physical act, especially after reading. It even implies a preference for pen and paper over typing.
Really?
Yeah.
Pen and paper, why?
Well, the thinking behind this, drawing on some cognitive science, is that manual writing, the physical movement, engages your brain differently than typing. It uses kinesthetic memory.
Right.
It basically creates stronger memory traces. More neural pathways light up compared to just seeing the word or tapping it out on a screen. That physical act helps lodge it deeper, moving go from short-term recall to long-term storage.
I get the science, but isn't that a bit impractical sometimes? Like if I'm reading an article on my phone on the bus, am I really going to whip out a notebook and pen for every new word?
Yeah.
Seems kind of cumbersome.
That's a fair point, a very practical challenge. And the source isn't totally old school. It does acknowledge we need efficiency,
Okay, good.
which is why the second part of this retention stage brings in technology, specifically things like dictionary apps.
Okay. So there's a tech angle.
Definitely. But even with the tech, the core principle holds. After you write the word down, physically or digitally, maybe the next immediate step is vital. You have to try and use that word in your own sentence right away.
Contextualization. Okay, that makes sense. You force your brain to figure out how it works grammatically, where it fits.
Exactly. It's like a mini test. You're proving to yourself, okay, I don't just know the definition, I kind of get how to use this thing. It seals the deal mentally.
Right. You're checking if you really understand its function and meaning in a real-world context.
Precisely. And this is where those dictionary apps really come into their own according to the source. They're not just for looking up definitions anymore.
Oh, so.
Well, good ones offer a lot more. They give you example sentences, which is huge. They often have audio for pronunciation, crucial. And many now include features based on spaced repetition systems, SRS.
Okay. Spaced repetition. That's the tech that quizzes you on things just before you're likely to forget them, right?
That's the one. It's incredibly effective for memory. So the app basically becomes like a personalized tutor. It figures out which words you're shaky on and keeps bringing them back. And it knows which ones you've got down cold.
So it's a smart system, not just a list.
Exactly. So you combine writing it down, making your own sentence, and then letting the app handle the spaced review. That whole process systematically moves the word from seen it somewhere to ready to use. It helps you break down that passive vocabulary wall.
Okay, that's a solid process for getting words in and making them stick. Input and retention. What's next?
Well, the source knows that if learning isn't engaging, people just stop.
Yeah, motivation tanks if it feels like homework.
Right. So the next stage is all about application, but making it enjoyable, bringing in play, gamification.
Okay, the fun part. I like the sound of that. How do we play with words?
This is sort of the third pillar. You've got the input, you've got the retention. Now you need practice in a low-stakes way. A place to try things out without pressure, to build speed and comfort.
So games, like actual games.
Yep. The source specifically mentions classics like Scrabble or crossword puzzles, but also modern vocabulary apps often have built-in games.
Okay, Scrabble, crosswords. We know those. But how does the source suggest using them effectively for learning specifically, not just for fun?
Good question. It argues that these games force you to recall words quickly and apply them under a little bit of time pressure or constraint. That actually mimics real conversation much better than just drilling flashcards.
Interesting point. Faster recall.
Yeah, and think about it. A crossword reinforces common word pairings, collocations, like which verb usually goes with which noun. Vocabulary apps might have games where you fill in blanks in sentences, forcing you to think about grammar, too.
So it's not just about knowing the definition of a fancy word like, I don't know, solipsism.
Right.
It's about being able to actually slot it into a sentence correctly when the moment comes, and quickly.
Exactly that. Deploying it. And the source suggests making this a small daily habit, like a quick 10 or 15-minute word challenge using an app's game feature.
Consistency again.
Always. But framing it as a game or a challenge makes it less daunting. It removes that mental drag of, oh, I have to study now. If it feels like play, you're more likely to do it.
Okay, so play helps make the practice stick and become more automatic. And I guess all of this, the reading, listening, writing, playing, leads to the final step.
It does. The ultimate goal, actually using the language. The final piece of the puzzle in the sources method is the output strategy.
Output, meaning speaking.
Speaking regularly,
Okay.
yes. This closes the loop.
Out-
Well, we've read the words, we've heard them, we've written them down, maybe used tech to review them, played games with them. But if we don't actually try to say them in conversation, they can still feel a bit theoretical, not fully ours.
Right. Still stuck in your head.
Exactly. So the source is very explicit. You must make an effort to use your newly learned vocabulary in your daily chats. Or, if you don't have many chances, in dedicated speaking practice, maybe with a language partner, or even just recording yourself.
That makes total sense. Forcing yourself to use a new word in a real conversation gives you instant feedback.
Bingo! The listener's reaction, whether they understand you, whether it sounds natural, that's your real-world test result. Did it land correctly?
Yeah, that consequence, positive or negative, probably cements the learning more strongly than anything else.
It's arguably the strongest layer of retention. So if you look at the whole method laid out in the source, it's this really neat continuous cycle, isn't it?
Yeah, let's recap that cycle.
Okay, you start with input that's reading and listening. Then you move to processing that's writing the word down, using it in a sentence, maybe leveraging tech like dictionary apps with SRS. Then comes application through play games like crosswords or apps, and finally output actually speaking and using the words.
Input, processing, play, output. Reading, listening, writing, tech, gaming, speaking.
Exactly. And by constantly cycling through those, the source suggests you avoid getting overwhelmed by just trying to memorize massive lists. You build your active vocabulary much more naturally, more organically, and practically.
It shifts vocabulary building from feeling like this separate academic chore to being just an integrated part of getting better at communicating in English overall. It's not about definitions. It's about being more effective when you talk or write.
That is precisely the point. And you don't feel overwhelmed because the focus is on the process, on consistency, not on trying to learn 50 words by tomorrow.
Right. Slow and steady, but using a smart system.
That's the idea.
Okay, so let's bring this all home for you, the listener. This source guide gave us a really clear, integrated system. It goes way beyond just read more or use flashcards.
It does. So what does this all mean? I think the core insight really is that success here isn't about finding some magical word list.
No silver bullet list.
No, it's about setting up this specific continuous process. You have to connect the input, the processing, maybe that physical act of writing with digital tools, then test it out with low stakes fun like games before finally deploying it in actual conversation.
And that simple recipe, that cycle we just talked about, the source basically boils it down to read, listen, write, use technology, play, and speak.
That's the whole loop. And the source really hammers home. Start small, but be consistent. That consistency is what powers the whole thing. It turns words you know into words you can use.
Start small, stay consistent.
Okay, so building on that idea of consistency, if we accept that real vocabulary growth comes from these small daily actions, maybe it's just noting down one word from an article you read or spending 5 minutes on a word game app.
Here's a thought to leave you with. What is the absolute smallest, most manageable, start small action you could commit to today, right now? Something tiny you could actually do consistently to start implementing this integrated strategy we've unpacked.
Find that one small thing, that first domino, commit to it daily, and then just trust the process. Watch that consistency build momentum.
Exactly.
That is your deep dive into boosting your English vocabulary based on the source material you provided. Really practical stuff today.
Glad it was helpful.
We really appreciate you sharing your sources with us.
Until next time, keep learning and keep asking questions.